Here's the biggest secret. It's not as big a jump from A2 to B1 as you might think. You don't need to learn lots of new grammatical structures, more complicated tenses, new cases, or even twice as many words. Although, of course, you'll want to be continually working on this anyway. So, what do you need then? How do you get to that next level? Well, that's our job for today. Grüß Gott, hallo, ich bin Billy Badger und das ist wieder mal Bausteiner 3. Herzlich willkommen. Okay, here's what I mean. Let's use this simple question as an example. Ist es besser in der Stadt zu wohnen oder auf dem Land? It's a question where we can probably think of an answer, but it's not so straightforward. There's no right or wrong answer, but there are opinions and probably reasons for our answer. Let's quickly draw up a list of some of the arguments for and against so that we can then look at different ways of presenting them at our B1 level. So in favour of living in the country, we might say, auf dem Land ist es ruhiger. Auf dem Land hat man mehr Platz. Auf dem Land sind die Häuser günstiger. Auf dem Land sind die Häuser auch größer. Auf dem Land ist das Leben weniger stressig. And in favour of life in the city, we might argue, auf dem Land ist zu wenig los. Auf dem Land sind die Schulen und die Supermärkte zu weit weg. Auf dem Land ist man auf das Auto angewiesen. In der Stadt hat man mehr zu tun. We might well come up with some of these arguments at the A2 level, but let's take it now to the next level. We'll follow this system. We'll take a standpoint, present an opinion, justify our opinions, provide further arguments, maybe advantages and disadvantages, and then on the other side, we'll either agree or maybe only partially agree, and then present counter-arguments. It's the sort of thing that we're doing in the B1 test. Let's take a step at a time. Zunächst wollen wir zum Thema Stellung nehmen, unsere Meinung äußern. We want to present our standpoint, our opinion. Now, we could say, es ist besser auf dem Land zu wohnen, but this is just a statement of fact. And we need to express that it's our opinion. So let's look at some of the ways that we can do this. We could start with ich finde. That works pretty well. Ich finde, es ist besser auf dem Land zu wohnen. But maybe it's better to use a conjunction. Ich finde, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen, with a comma after every clause, of course. Now it's clear you're presenting your opinion. Or we could replace ich finde with ich glaube, ich denke, or maybe even ich meine. And this last one is a verb that literally presents your opinion. Let's look at a few slightly more advanced ways of doing this. Ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen. You are of the opinion, some genitive there, that it's better to live in the country. Or you could eliminate the subordinate clause and say, meiner Meinung nach ist es besser, auf dem Land zu wohnen. And this is nice because we've only got one main phrase, the Hauptsatz, and an infinitive clause. I've got a few more suggestions in this week's guide, so check this out if you want some more detail while we move on, because we're going to have to provide some convincing arguments. And this is where our conjunctions are going to be useful. Three main ones. Ones I'm sure you already know. Weil, da and denn. And you might say, ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen, weil es ruhiger ist. We could use da in much the same way, but with den, of course, we need to make sure the verb stays in the second position in that second phrase. And the most important thing when you're constructing these long sentences is, I think, to keep your clauses separated by commas, particularly if you're writing, of course, so we're more aware of where clauses end and conscious of where those verbs should be. But often you have more than one reason, and luckily we've got some structures that help us express this pretty clearly. After you've presented your opinion, you could continue in this way. Zum einen ist es ruhiger und zum anderen sind die Häuser billiger. Here's another way of doing the same thing. Ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen. Einerseits ist es ruhiger und andererseits sind die Häuser auch billiger. Or actually, why not use a structure that we've already learned, which will work as long as we keep the subjects the same. Ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen, weil es nicht nur ruhiger ist, sondern auch weniger stressig. Or perhaps, ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen, weil die Häuser nicht nur größer sind, sondern auch günstiger. Another alternative would be the word außerdem, which means beside, furthermore or in addition. Ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen, weil die Häuser billiger sind und außerdem viel größer. Immediately, our simple reasons, those ones we came up with at the beginning, are sounding much more complex and convincing. And all we're doing is adding one additional word. Or we could use another really nice phrase, one of my favorites, abgesehen davon, which means apart from that. Abgesehen davon, dass die Häuser billiger sind sie auch größer. Apart from the fact that the houses are cheaper, they are also bigger. A next step might be to present any further information, like maybe the consequences of what we've just been talking about. So we could continue this way. Das bedeutet, dass wir ein Gästezimmer haben könnten. That means that we could have a room for visitors. So now our complete argument might look like this. Ich bin der Meinung, dass es besser ist, auf dem Land zu wohnen, weil dort die Häuser nicht nur billiger sind, sondern auch größer. Das bedeutet, dass man mehr Haustiere haben könnte und abgesehen davon hätte man mehr Platz für ein großes Gemüsebeet. So you've presented and justified your argument. And if people agree with you, if you're lucky, you might hear phrases like these. Das stimmt. Du hast recht. So sehe ich es auch. Ich sehe es genauso. All of which indicate simple agreement. But slightly more advanced is the verb zustimmen, which is used with the dative. So you might hear, ich stimme dir zu. Or if we want to express more complete agreement, we've got phrases like these ones. Ich stimme dir vollkommen zu. Or ich bin ganz deiner Meinung. Again with the genitive. And du hast vollkommen recht. But often people won't completely agree. So to express only partial agreement, we'll want to include qualifying phrases like teilweise or zum Teil. Ich stimme dir teilweise zu. Or du hast zum Teil recht. And this is then where words like aber, allerdings or jedoch can come in, because they introduce areas of disagreement. So you might hear counterarguments like these. Ich stimme dir teilweise zu, aber auf dem Land ist man eher auf das Auto angewiesen. I agree with you partly, but in the country you have to rely more on the car. Or perhaps, das ist wahr, allerdings ist es meistens sehr weit bis zur nächsten Schule. That's true. However, it's mostly a long way to the next school. Or maybe if the other person completely disagrees, you might hear phrases that express this while introducing counterarguments. Da kann ich Ihnen aber nicht zustimmen. Auf dem Land ist das Leben oft sehr einsam, wogegen man in der Stadt viele soziale Kontakte knüpfen kann. Whereas you have much more social contact in the city. Or perhaps, das Argument finde ich nicht zwingend. Da bedenken Sie nicht, dass in kleinen Schulen Lehrer oft mehr Zeit für die Schüler haben. I don't find the argument convincing or compelling. You're not considering the fact that the teachers often have more time for the school kids in small schools. So here's an overview of the whole discussion process. Over on this side, we're building up an argument, presenting opinions, justifying them. And then over on this side, we're thinking about how to counter these arguments and present counter arguments. So there are no really complicated grammatical structures, no rare vocab that we need to learn. We're using a lot of the grammatical structures that we already know, that we already learned in A2. We just need a couple of handy phrases, some good reasoning and a little bit of logic. Check out this week's guide und wir sehen uns dann im nächsten Video. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Alles Gute. Tschüss.